So Carter is a gentleman who happens to be an angel investor, and Asif, who did a startup, and I'll let him tell you. It's a wonderful story when you hear from him how he came across his the idea of starting this company. One of his family members, senior members, were sick, and this was the basic startup and idea that he conceived. And today, he has raised $14 million. Obviously, he must have started as the small first, and as we said, started with bootstrapping, and now today I think this is his third or fourth round of raising capital. And this is one side where he is raising capital, on the other hand, the capital provider, such as Carter Kennedy, and he is the angel investor. And my very first question to both of you would be starting with the Asif, because it's an amazing story with Asif. So Asif, just in very few words, tell the audience how you started the company and how did you conceive this idea.
Yeah, thanks. So nice to be here. As part of Open Chicago, it's nice to see the community grow. So my story, I guess, I spent a lot of my time in corporate America. I spent more than a decade in GE, General Electric Company, in various businesses. My last stint was in healthcare IT business. I was a global product leader for PACS, which is radiology infrastructure, technology backend for health systems and whatnot. So that's what I was doing, and talking about how we can make information available to radiologists or physicians quickly so they can make better decisions instead of chasing each other with phones and faxes. So along the same time, my parents, they work in Pakistan. They retired, but they do some volunteer work in the middle of nowhere in interior Sindh. They're building hospitals or schools and orphanages and clean water, all that type of work, 100% volunteer. My mom gets sick and they put her on ventilators. I fly over there and it was a chaos because my dad had this big stack of paperwork. So I was really frustrated. I was like, I commend you for what you guys are doing, but you are growing old, you live in the middle of nowhere, and you have no information organized anywhere to do anything with it. So my dad, he retired as the CEO of Pakistan Railways, very influential, very smart guy. He's like, well, you live in the most advanced country in the world, United States. You work for one of the biggest companies in the world, GE, in healthcare. Why didn't you tell me which medications you took 3 months ago? And I started scratching my head, and I'm like, wait a second, that's a good question. Nobody can answer this question, right? Why not? So that was kind of the impetus of what I realized that needed to happen. So I came back, resigned from GE, and started this company, CareMerge. And the concept is everybody is tired of chasing each other, and it's very problematic and extremely painful to really get your primary care physician to connect with your therapist and connect with the hospitalist, and the list goes on. And if we can centralize that data around the patient and centralize all the stakeholders, including the family members, and you can build different protocols. So as different people are doing their work, we can harness that intelligence and drive different protocols and notifications and workflows, among others. So that's what we do at CareMerge. Our focus is the 5% of the population that's the oldest, that's driving 40% of our healthcare expense in billions of dollars. And that's the seniors, some of the trends that Naved talked about earlier. We serve senior living facilities, nursing homes, and assisted living memory care, and connecting them with different providers. So sorry, it was not a few words, a lot of words, but that's the story.
It's a very interesting story. So I was intrigued by it 2 months ago when I heard you mention it the first time. So Carter, in your life, you've been an angel investor prior to joining Solo Insight. And how did you, I know that you met Farhan Masood first, and that was probably, you were looking for a startup, looking for some sort of good investment that will pay you back, just like any other investor, like looking for ROI, return on their investments. So tell us your story. How did you really hook up with Farhan? especially overseas.
Yeah, so, you guys hear me?
I think need to turn his mic on.
Yeah, can you, yes, there we go. I think the story is interesting. I mean, it starts with Farhan. I'll speak a little bit about Farhan because I'm so amazed by him all the time. He was discovered at age 19 for rewriting the script on the internet in Urdu and Arabic. He worked for the King of Dubai and he solved the immigration problems by creating a biometric gate for people to leave so they could capture revenue on the way out. He then entered into world-class competitions and has won 39 of them. I met him in 2013 after he'd won the MIT Business Acceleration Program. And so I'm in Crosby's up near Lakeview, and my friend called me and said, "Look, can you meet me at Crosby's? I know that in the past when you were working with Goldman and you're an options trader, you're a lover of mathematics, and you're a lover of optionality, and you're a lover of investments where there's an intelligence and there's some interesting synergies that I think you might be attracted to in this introduction." And so at the time I was working for a company that I had started called Airtight Compliance, and when Dodd-Frank came, there were massive new regulations and there were compliance issues that each and every compliance officer had to solve. So we created a compliance software to solve those problems for RIAs and hedge funds. Crowded space, difficult space, still working on it. I meet Farhan and we're in a restaurant and I have chicken in front of me, and Farhan begins to speak about this biometric device that he was working with that provided flawless identity for Pepsi, for Nestle, for Lay's. I said, wait a minute, so you're going to replace those flawed cards that can be lost and used to punch people in who are not supposed to be there? Does it work? Biometrics don't work, they're clunky. You get false positives, there's all sorts of issues with it. We began to talk, and it became apparent to me that he's one of the brightest people I've ever met. And he's also a kind human being, and he's also an entrepreneur, and he's tough as nails. So I like all those qualities. So I began to think maybe this is a good investment opportunity. So we spent about 6 months trying to figure out. I was still with my other job at Airtight, figuring out how we might work together because he's still living in Pakistan. And I finally took this to one of our top inventors and mentors, Jay Shukawat, who at the time was the CEO of Fieldglass before he had an exit with SAP. And he said, what you're currently working on, which is an intelligent pepper spray, we'll get into that. You're going to have, I know that's a $25 million business. Wow, $25 million business, and I want you to get rid of it. I don't ever want you to think about it again. Because the business that you have, taking this hardware company with a software that's so transformational, making it into a platform, a software platform for access control, security, contractors, compliance, that's $1 billion business. So trust me, get rid of what you're working on and work on what I'm directing you to do, and I'll invest in you and I'll guide you. And that was really the genesis of our relationship. And so we've been able to attract capital from a managing director from BlackRock, from people that sit on the American Airlines board and the CIT board, and a whole laundry list of very successful high net worth individuals that are also strategically aligned with our outcome of working with large companies like Home Depot, like Caterpillar, like Jones Lang LaSalle to provide flawless security at the point of entry. And that's one of the most powerful things you can have is who's coming into your building. And right now you don't know. So if there's a security event, you can't communicate with them and you still don't know who's inside. If there's a compliance regulation that needs to be enforced, because you don't know who's inside your building, you can't enforce those. So that's what we've created at Solo Insight, and we're working very hard at it. And that was the genesis is that I invested first, kind of sponsored this interaction, and then Farhan invited me to be a major investor and CEO.
So the next step could be that if Trump wins, and you can build something for him where he knows who's coming into this country. So was there a management team in place when you thought of investing in this company? I mean, was there a complete business plan, or was this just some very highly intelligent person you came across and you said,
it's a really good question, because what had already occurred is the algorithms around recognition had been developed. So 3D facial and iris recognition were currently being used by Pepsi, Nestle, and Lay's. That was part of the attraction, that it was a mature technology in a an offshore application. But the technology had been used and refined, and so that gave me a level of confidence. At the time, we had 28 customers, and we had about 18 people working for us offshore. We're now 60 people offshore, and we're 8 people onshore. And then the customers offshore have gone to 152 with 125,000 people using our solution every day. And so part of what I did before I invested and became CEO is to go to Pakistan. I've been there 3 different times. But the first time I went for 32 days and just visited 58 facilities. So I've been all over your country. It's beautiful. Love it. Fantastic.
So, Asif, in your case, so there were several variables: growing and aging population, healthcare reforms, millennials in the work, research. You spent 1.5 years in various settings before releasing your first product. So you were focusing on the product as well as you must have been focusing on your management team as well. So was this all done in a year and a half?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, you gotta do all those things in parallel, right? You gotta hire people, you gotta run the product, you gotta worry about engineering, you gotta sell the product, you gotta manage partnerships, right? You gotta do all of that. So I think when we started, it was just me, but then I found a co-founder, because I think a lot of people, there's a misconception, oh, I gotta do it alone, and there's no such thing as alone. I mean, this is all about working together, finding smart people and working together, because that's the only way you can be successful. If you think it's your idea and only you can, do this, it's not gonna happen, because you need a lot of different people to work together. So finding the right people has always been top of mind, or I think for almost all entrepreneurs.
So team building is very, very important no matter what type of business you come across, no matter what type of entrepreneurs you meet, even the scientists that when you meet, that you ask them how do they come about this product, they talk about teams. It's always teams. So selecting the right team member is no different than dating. I think it was somebody mentioned that over here, or selecting a partner to live with, right? So.
And I think to add to that, I think when you talk about team is not just you and the immediate people. You start hiring people with a set of mindset, right? And the mindset comes from the culture. What are the core values you believe in? Are you in for an exit? Are you in to create value? Or are you in to change the world? Or are you in to solve a problem? There are different types of entrepreneurs who have different types of, and that's what drives your core values. And I think having those core values, then you're actually looking at people like Carter and your example for Anand. You guys partner because you connected from a core value perspective. Okay, this is a big problem, we gotta solve it, and this is how we're gonna do it. I think you probably talked about, there's sometime down the road there's an exit, but who cares about the exit? It's about the journey, right? So that's what I think is very important. I think on the other side, because it's one of the discussions we're having is about raising capital, and I think Dilawar talked about when you're looking for capital, you should go after as many as you need to, because you're actually looking to find a team of people who are going to support you from a capital side. So there's an operational side team, which is you and the team and the company, but there's the capital side of things, which the VCs who are going to. So you really need to be very, very careful and understand, are we aligned with those people? So different types of teams working together.
So in your case, Carter, I know that so you were intrigued by the concept and you were intrigued by the team that was operating this solo inside the first stage in Pakistan. So, but prior to that, this is your first foreign investment.
It is my first foreign investment.
So what really motivated you? I mean, this is a huge, you can't commit yourself to invest funds, whether they're small or big, whatever it is, so your funds and you're looking for return on investment. What really motivated you to invest in a foreign company?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And so part of the due diligence process, and 3 times I went to Pakistan, was getting to know our team. And I think we're blessed with the fact that Farhan's a well-known technologist and a leader, and people love to follow him. And so we've been able to attract exceptional talent. And you should know on the global stage, Pakistan has some of the best engineers in the world and some of the brightest people in the world. The fact you live in multi-generational houses, while may be painful at times when your grandmother's getting in your business, it keeps our team pretty much on the straight and narrow. And I think that we have an extremely focused, intelligent, very, very professional team. We've pivoted from a hardware gate solution to a software platform in the last 8 months. We can only do it with the leadership of Harm Masood and the senior leadership of our team offshore. And so part of what made me confident to invest was getting to know our teammates and their skill sets and to see how they work with one another, and they really coalesced in the last 8 months. And then seeing their productivity, because it's exceptional. I'll put them against anybody else in the world.
So, as Asif stated earlier, how important it is to remain focused. You've got a business plan that you're going to follow. First is the concept of the business plan, and then you need to build your team as well as remain focused on your core business, as well as remain focused on your finances and how much finance you need. And every entrepreneur will advise you to raise more capital than you really need. So these are the basics. And the reason that I'm taking a little head start is so I don't want to be asking questions to these two gentlemen. I think we should open up the floor, the Q&A session for the audience, so they can ask you and learn from you guys. So do we have Mike over here?
I'm Khan Siddiqui, I'm CTO of AE. Carter, can you walk us through your, the reason for pivot and what are the issues, and then an example of what happened, what are the reasons, and why, and how you, after 8 months of doing it, your decision, what do you call it? Like, does that make sense or not?
It's a really good question. And so, offshore, our core competency is working with spinning mills and working with CPG plants and companies like Pepsi. It's working with voodoo factories. And so we're actually managing access, security, and safety at the point of entrance for large numbers of people coming in and out. So we build that hardware and we sell it. It's a CapEx model, it's a one-time revenue. We have a maintenance fee that's on top of that, which it's lucrative, but it's not as lucrative as the software as a service business. And it doesn't have as much flexibility. One disadvantage to being a hardware company is the moment that you install that hardware, it's obsolete. And it requires maintenance and upgrades. Software, on the other hand, can be upgraded from the cloud. So when we came to the US, while we thought the core competency was singularly manufacturing, this is massive horizontal. Flawless Identity has applications to healthcare. It has applications to construction sites. It has applications to online education. And so once we recognized the real opportunity, we just stripped the software out of the hardware and made it a platform. Do we regret that? Not at all. We wish it had happened sooner? Possibly, but I think our timing's pretty good.
Thank you. My name is Faz. I'm a co-founder of Luminous Tech and use software-defined infrastructure to migrate companies from the old legacy infrastructure. And what I'm really interested in, Carter, is your experience in this day and age when, and by the way, we are seeing a lot of traction in Middle East, Pakistan especially, because as a lot of the broadband subscription has increased significantly over the 2-3 years. It's just phenomenal market to work in. What I'm really interested in is your experience and coming from this day and age when Pakistan has this huge cloud of negativity perception-wise, and somebody like you comes in and speaks with Farhan. Just want to see if there was any experience or anything you can share about how did you have any apprehensiveness or anything like that. I'm just really curious to know what your perspective is there.
Yeah, the first time I went, I really didn't know what to expect. It's not. I think about Pakistan the way it's reflected in the media, and the media's whole job is to sensationalize everything. So they don't talk about the south side of Chicago and what violence takes place there on a relative basis to what happens in Lahore, as an example. There's not the same level of violence. In any event, I wanted to know more about the culture, and I was fortunate when I went over to be taken care of so well It's such a generous culture. I did find the one thing that made me a popular CEO is that if I provide food for the people that are working for me, they're a pretty happy group. So Lahorians with food at meals, that's a good way for me to help lead. But I found it to be forget about all the media nonsense. It's all hype. It's a very family-oriented culture. It's a very devout culture. It's a very disciplined culture. It's a very intelligent culture. So I have nothing but good things to say, and I'm very happy that I've made this business decision, brought my business contacts and other professionals into the business, and we're looking forward to having great success as we grow here and offshore. Thank you.
So this question is for Asif. You've had an incredible journey so far in terms of raising capital from a variety of sources. Can you walk us through that journey? Because I feel like you've got some non-traditional people on the cap table, so that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So I think the key thing, which I think Dilawar mentioned earlier, actually Salman also, it's all about relationships. I think you want to be cognizant of that, and I think lots of people use the word networking. Network is not just about trying to talk to people, it's about trying to talk to people with a purpose and some meaning, right? And when you have that purpose and meaning, and everybody is different, what's the purpose that you're looking for? Dilawar's was, hey, I'm just a curious guy, I like to talk to people, I just like to understand. So I think building those relationships and getting the funding, it seems like, oh great, Asif got this capital from GE and a whole bunch of other, Blue Cross Blue Shield and whatnot. It takes time to build those relationships, and it takes time to build that trust, and when the time comes, things kind of fall in place. So capital raising is the same thing. You have to, the minute you think about, at least that's what the playbook I use, the minute I thought about, okay, I'm building this platform, CareMerge, and very ambitious vision, right? Our vision is that all healthcare data, all healthcare decisions are going to move on CareMerge at one time, globally. It's a very ambitious vision. In order to achieve that ambitious vision, you gotta have capital, so you cannot do it, bootstrapping. It doesn't work that way. Some of the things we all have talked about is it's the total opportunity, right? How big is the opportunity? In my first time I raised capital, I didn't even define that global opportunity because everybody knows how big of a problem or a mess it is to communicate when you're a healthcare patient, right? Everybody knows that if you have experienced an event. So I think it boils down to relationships. The first capital we raised through friends and family, I put in my own money. People love when entrepreneurs put their own money because they know that, okay, now you're committed, you're double committed, you double down or whatever, because you're doing sweat equity, and then on top of it, you're putting your own money, that's like doubling down. So, that's people like that because that shows confidence in yourself and as an entrepreneur. Once you do that, you continue to talk to people about what you're doing, not necessarily for raising capital, but just throwing ideas and just listening to people what sticks. And then you kind of continue to improve your business plan, get customers, continue to grow your customer base, and as you grow your customer base, as you get new logos, you basically send to all your broadcast to all your people that you're talking to in the VC community. Hey, I signed this big deal. I signed this. Now we're in 30 states. Now we're in 40 states. Now we're in 45 states. Kind of building that momentum gets people excited, right? So that's one of the things I think. Just continue to communicate and establish those relationships, and just tell people what you're working on and how much progress you're making. So that's number one. It takes a lot of effort because you got to run your company in a very small, team. But at the same time, you got to, do that. The other piece is, so as we kind of moved along, our first investor was a billionaire ex-supermodel out of Europe, right? So of all the places. So that she put in $2 million as a starting point. She loved what we were doing, and she was having some challenges with her kind of family and whatnot. So she connected the dots. Then from there, we continue to grow the business, continue telling people how we're doing. And in our first institutional round, it was oversubscribed. So we raised $4 million, but we had at least 7-8 different VCs who wanted to come in, and each VC, they usually write checks for $3 to $4 million themselves. So, trying to get them squished in into $4 million was a very interesting experience. So we had GE, we had Blue Cross Blue Shield in the form of Cambia Health, we had Ziegler, which is a Chicago-based investment bank for senior living facilities. We had Formation Capital, which is also healthcare assets. They have all these healthcare buildings. And then we have Arsenal, which is a organization that works very closely with Department of Defense. So Veterans Affairs, they fit into the Department of Defense. So those were the 5 investors that got into this very, very small round. So I call this a strategic round, and that's something you always have to, if you're raising capital, you got to think about, do you want strategic investors or do you want pure VC investors? It depends. If you want to build a global healthcare company where all healthcare data moves, we need to have companies like GE, right? That is in every single hospital system one way or another. So we got that. We want to understand who is taking the risk. So that's Cambia in the form of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you've got those people. Who owns all the healthcare assets, right? So you've got those in. So you're really nicely organized with strategic. So the next round that we just recently closed at $14 million, we brought in a New York company that Insight Venture Partners. They're pure SaaS company. They look at moonshot opportunities, and they saw care mergers. They investors in companies like Zenefits and Alibaba that lots of you know about. So that's a little bit of a little history of how we came about, which investors, why, and where we're at. So sorry about the long-winded answer, but I think
It's a good answer.
Quick question, either of you can answer. When you're working on in a company where you're operating on both opposite sides of the world, and you are the heartbeat of the business, especially a startup, is the real-time collaboration between what's happening in the marketplace firsthand and the engineering operation, or whichever operation is offshore. How do you see because we're never going to change the time zone difference, no matter how close the technology brings us, we still have that as a logistical issue. Do you see that as a logistical issue? And secondly, if you're as a venture cap, if you hear a pitch from a startup that tells them about a great idea, but their engineering operation is somewhere in Asia, how do you see that when you're evaluating that company?
I got a really funny story about that. So when we were raising capital in our last, not this recent round, but the last round, we didn't even have a company in Pakistan, because you know how pain in the ass it is to create a company in Pakistan. Right? Sorry, but it's just very difficult. So how, if you don't have a company, how are you going to pay people over there? So we had Fahad's brother, Fahad is a co-founder and CTO, he's based in the Valley. So we had Fahad's brother's personal account where we were transferring money from our first round, or all the revenue that we get, just transferring thousands of dollars a month to run the operation that he was distributing in cash to different people. It's crazy stuff. Right? So we go raise this capital, we're in discussions, negotiating with GE, Cambia, all these other guys. They're like, where's your paperwork for Pakistan, with due diligence, right? Where's your paperwork for Pakistani company? Oh, we don't have it. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're kicking ass and you have a product that's selling and it's solid and you seem to have, they did background checks on it just like any other VC would, and everything comes clean, and they're like, yeah, it's a little risky. They spent, I think, more money on, they did spend quite a bit of money on their law firm. And we were on a lot of calls with 5 different international lawyers trying to ask these questions, and we had to hire a lawyer in Pakistan who was communicating how things work over there. But at the end of the day, if your product is working and it's selling and you're making money, and people are like, okay, we can deal with that risk. It's okay. So I think that if your product is working well, people take that risk all day long. And over here it's just a sitting example, right? People took a risk and invested in it.
Hi, thanks so much for coming out. Just want to ask a quick question. So I'm a co-founder of a software startup myself. I run Busy, which is a sales tool. We're a pretty early stage company. I guess my question is, how do you know when the right time is to go seek outside funding? I know I've been in talk with a couple of different angels and VC firms, and some of them are saying go out and raise a family and friends round. We don't want to take that approach. But so when is it, from a technology aspect as well as a business aspect, when's the right time to go out and raise? I know, Carter, you've done it in quite small time frame. Could you sort of explain that a little bit?
From my perspective, it's when you have to have it. So it's when you see an opportunity and it's been validated by customers, and you've gotten support, you recognize that if you went from 2 to 8 to 18, that you would, quintuple the amount of money you would make. I mean, it's not linear in terms of, you're an entrepreneur. You're willing to take risk. You're willing to get your nose bloody. Okay, that's a starting point. Then you have to find advocates and good team members. And you have to figure out how you're going to work with those team members so that they're aligned with your success. And then you have to figure out the capital that complements that whole team's effort. But I think it should be obvious to you that you're ready to make that move. We're in a wonderful city now in Chicago that's not nearly what Silicon Valley is, but it's much more competitive than it was 5 years ago. And there's a lot more people with successful dollars that they've made from investments that will be willing to listen to you.
I can also, I think, again, it depends on what's your core value and what you want to do. Like Naveed was talking about the opportunity, how big is the opportunity and what you want to accomplish at the end. With our kind of size of opportunity and we need to build this global platform, we're always raising, like I said earlier, you're not necessarily raise capital at a specific point in time. You're always connected with people with capital who are tracking you, who are tracking your progress. So you check in with them every 3 months or 6 months or whatever, once a year, and you tell them about your progress. Last time we met, this is how much revenue we had, this is where we were at product, this is where we were at team, like a business update like you're giving to a board or to yourself. So you got to show that progress and build that relationship, and at some point in time, a whole bunch of people will be like, oh, I know this guy, I can buy for it, I trust this person, and I want to invest in it. So there's this kind of momentum. I think people say always raising capital, you're always raising capital. I kind of look at it, you're always maintaining those relationships. So when you do need capital, people know you, they know you've made progress, they know what you've done, so it helps.
I seldom ask the questions, but it just compels me to ask you. I'm actually in healthcare too. I met with Mr. Carter. I applaud him. He did a wonderful job, and he saw the talent in you. And we are very happy to see both of you here. My question to you is: do you attract the institutional money and give them personal guarantee, or you invest them? You're not a public, right? So can you please explain to us that how you do this one?
So if I understand the question,
how you raise this money on personal guarantee, or you give them shares?
yeah, you're basically selling parts of your equity. So when you start, you own 0% of 100%, zero value of 100%, 100% of $0, right, of your equity, right? You own 100% of nothing. But as you grow the company, your pie grows. So maybe it's $100,000 worth, 500,000, million, 2, 5, 10, and when you get those investors in, you have to give them shares. So that's the equity. So how do you negotiate with them on how much equity? It depends on the valuation. What's the valuation? If something is worth $100 million and you want 10% of it, then you give me 10 million, right? Some simple math. So things like that.
So, hi Asif. If I may ask you a question. There was a question earlier on in the panel asked on evaluations. So you have had, raises from non-traditional investors, and you went to the Valley, you have raises from traditional investors. If you could just shed a little bit light on the valuations, like how are the non-traditional investor evaluating your company versus the traditional investor, what the valuations are coming in?
Yeah.
Strategic.
Yeah, I think it's an art. It's more of an art than a science. I mean, if it's an established company, because we are not talking about established companies, right? Because you have revenues for so many years, your net income is there, you have a net income positive, your cash flows are good, and then you're raising capital. It's a totally different you use. Coming from a booth myself, there are a whole bunch of financial analysis that is available to you, so you can say what's the IRR on the company, but it doesn't work that way in startups. It's more of an art, and I think it's all about what the comps are. So what are your comps, comparatives, to what you're trying to do. So you look at in the market and say which healthcare tech company got recently funded, how much did they raise, what was the value. That's one. The other is the total opportunity. How big is the opportunity? It's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Then these investors have a different mindset. So strategics have a different mindset. Pure VCs have a different mindset. So depending on who you're talking to, they have a different mindset. And some people will say, oh, that's a huge opportunity, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to crack the nut on healthcare communication. And if you put in a couple $1 million, even if it doesn't go anywhere, okay, so what, right? But at least we took a shot at it. So different people, different investors have different kind of mindset, and you got to understand how are they evaluating? I think they're the GEs of the world, the Blue Cross Blue Shields of the world, they evaluate investments in a different way. They're more about solving the problem, whereas the pure VCs, of course, they're solving the problem too, but they look at the total opportunity. Like Dilar was saying, Freshdesk or LinkedIn or Twitter and all these companies are still negative, but the opportunity is so big that you get a higher multiple and higher valuation.
Great, thanks.
Basically, exit value.
I just want to ask you a question. Although the concept started when you visited Pakistan, is any part of it is being used there locally, or is it only for the US market?
We're in US and Canada. There we get tremendous amount of calls from Europe and Australia and New Zealand, but focus is very important. You want to make sure you focus on a market. Just in the US, for what we do, it's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Why distract yourself with international laws and all that kind of nonsense that comes with it? At this point in time, let GE worry about it and let them sell a care merge right down the road. Let them worry about it. We focus on capturing the market and nailing it down. In Pakistan, I think, unfortunately, it's people are not evolved. I think that's usually what I think. People need to evolve to appreciate something. And that's one of the, I think, biggest hurdles in technology, from within Pakistan, I think, is just the newer generation is definitely evolved, but the rest of the, I think, country, a lot of literacy, and I commend to the people at the foundation, the people who are helping with kids' education. That's amazing. That's what we really need to do. But we haven't really focused on it because people don't understand what we do, and it'd be great to talk to the Aga Khan folks because I think there's some opportunity there.
I think it's a great question for Carter also to answer. Since the startup was in Pakistan and is your concept, Solo Inside, it started in Pakistan. Is it still working in Pakistan? How is it doing in Pakistan?
When I invested, we had a small number of customers and a small number of programmers, but we had beautiful technology that had been tried and tested. And the business in Pakistan has expanded rapidly. We're now in 14 Pepsi bottling plants. We're at 152 customers now and 125,000 daily users. So that business is accelerated in terms of growth, and that's another thing that's been complementary. That's been a great, wonderful test bed with blue chip customers to give us good feedback, create workflows, and create IP. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful partnership.
Great. Well, due to the time constraints, I thank you very much, both of you.